taking names and kicking butts. This is Headkicks and Haymakers.
Good morning, fight fans. Welcome to another great episode of Head Kicks and Haymakers. I am that dude, as always, Bodkins. Before we get into Head Kicks and Haymakers, little house cleaning stuff. If you missed our Wednesday show, please check out our Wednesday show, the Bodkins Show, NFL Week 8 preview. We broke down every game. Kenny and Craig giving out some fantasy advice. Check out my man. I was on the sports rap, Philly sports rap with a Z. I was on that show yesterday. Incredible time with my guy Tone and a bunch of other fellas talking NFC East football. I was the lone guy that wasn't in NFC East football, but it's a lot of fun. Talked a lot of football. So please check that out. And then here in a couple hours, I'll be on Let's Talk Sports Morning Football Show. Me and Tanner are going to hold it down with a couple other guys with, as Dan's recovering. So, Dan, get healthy, get better, buddy. We miss you. Can't wait to be talking football with you again. So let's go ahead and get into it. You know what it is. We got to break down some fights. Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva, kind of what's next. Arnold Allen, this featherweight division's a mess. To help me talk all about it, and you know who it is. It's my main man, Craig with a K. Craig, what's up, big dog? How we doing? Another nice little fight night card was not too bad, but last night was headlined by Jake Paul and Anderson Silva.
Yeah, for sure, man. Good morning to you. Feels good to be back. Feel like I ain't been back on here in a minute, man. I've missed a couple Wednesday shows, but I guess the headliner was the Jake Paul Anderson Silva fight. But I didn't watch that fight live. I watched the Calvin Kattar Arnold Allen fight. I mean, personally, I was a little more intrigued in that fight. But so I haven't gone back and watched the entire Silva Jake Paul fight, but I have watched the fighters talk after the fights, and the way that Anderson Silva talked made me feel like you got to start respecting Jake Paul. I mean, Anderson Silva basically said it's time to respect that this is Jake Paul's time, and Jake Paul's a great fighter. If Anderson Silva can say that, then I mean, I take that as something. Anderson Silva to me has been the first real fighter of the bunch that Jake Paul has went out and fought against, did knock him out, and that's the crazy thing. I mean, to me, if you can go out there and you can outbox Anderson Silva with the points, then you can box, and so I think Nate is next. I mean, that fight is in the making, and I think honestly, after last night, I mean, it'd be hard to not think that Jake Paul can win that fight, because Nate Diaz is a guy that goes out there and takes a beating and just tries to hurt you. So if Jake Paul can go the distance, I mean, you got to think if you can beat Anderson Silva, on the card, that you can beat Nate Diaz on a card, I feel like. But I definitely feel like that is the next fight.
Yeah, Jake Paul, I mean, it was unanimous decision. Jake Paul beats Anderson Silva last night. There was no controversy. Anderson come out and said, hey, like you alluded to, Craig, come out and said, hey, he beat me fair and square. Like there's no controversy. I mean, knocked down Anderson in the 8th round. It was clear cut. No controversy, just straight on the cards. Kudos to Jake Paul. I mean, you can say what you want about this kid, but that was a legit striker, and I know Anderson's not like a legit boxer, but he is a legit striker. Like, Jake's fought wrestlers before, right? Like, I mean, we all kind of knew that before he fought not Robbie Law, but Tyrone Woodley, Ben Askren. Like, Ben Askren's not a striker. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we've seen that show before. Then he beats Tyrone Woodley. Woodley's got some hands, but is known as a wrestler. But this was a true striker. A great step. I thought a perfect step up. It's Anderson Silva. I know Anderson's an older guy. And we know that Jake Paul's about like 20 years younger than him. But this was a good step for Jake Paul. And he looks legit, and he's willing to take some of these fights. You alluded to Nate Diaz next. So it was reported and confirmed that, Nate Diaz's team, the Diaz brothers can't go anywhere without starting a little bit of trouble. and they were trying to go in at Jake. I think really not so much that they really have beef, but that's just Nate Diaz trying to stir up some stuff to get the next fight going, don't you think?
Yeah, that's kind of what Nate. I mean, that's what the Diaz brothers do, right? I mean, they stir the pot and get themselves right into the mix. But I mean, I feel like Jake Paul said he wants Nate Diaz next too, so that's in the making. And then just the way that both of their crews are and their personalities are, I feel like that's just I mean, that's going to be a stir the pot show all the way up until the fight happens. I feel like that's probably going to be the top selling Jake Paul fight at that point in time.
Yeah, to me, like I said this on I said this on my Wednesday show. I wanted Silva to win, but I kind of wanted him to lose because I wanted to see the Nate Diaz versus Jake Paul show. Like, sign me up, right? Like, you know me, Craig. I love the promos. I love guys. Like, I'm all in on the drama. You know me. Like, hey, sign me up for all the bad mouthing, for all the whatever, you know, that WWE style stuff. Like, hey, that gets my juices flowing more than anything. I could probably, you know, so give me that, baby. Give me those two guys on the stick. Give me all the press conferences. I'm signing up for I'm signing up for that. Like I felt bad rooting against Anderson, but Nate Diaz goes in the back and then leaves. Was around all week. I thought it was clever by Nate to do that. I thought it was clever by Jake to call him out to set that up, because that's the real money fight. Like I've never bought a Jake Paul fight, but man, if he fights Nate Diaz, I'm probably gonna buy that fight.
Yeah, man, I've never bought a Jake Paul fight, but I've bought some Nate Diaz fights, and so Nate Diaz and Jake Paul fight might be worth the purchase, you know. And like you said, man, just all the antics that go into it, man, that's what sells these fights. I mean, you could get two of the greatest fighters in the world that don't have the antics behind them, and people just don't care about it. There's a reason that Conor McGregor could still fight tomorrow and outsell everybody for the entire year because of the antics that come along with Conor McGregor, man. That just all of that sets up the atmosphere, that sets up the fight, man. I mean, the everything leading up to the fight, a lot of times it's almost better than the fight. You know what I mean? So it's got to have that. I feel like it to be a big selling fight, and Jake Paul and Nate Diaz has that written all over it.
It really does, and that's like 100%. Like you said, sometimes the antics up to it, but there's a lot of people like myself, especially like I follow everything, and you know, obviously we watch a lot of UFC stuff, but you know me, I get more hyped up when it's two bad bloods and two guys just mouthing each other at the sticks. Like, man, oh man, that gets me excited, because like that's the outside, and that a lot of people from the outside world who aren't into the community, you know, the MMA or boxing, they're gonna purchase it more because it's gonna get those clicks and views, and then they're going to want to know because of the bad blood. It'll be much like would you think that fight, Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz, would that outsell maybe Conor and Mayweather, or is that just too delusional, you think?
Yeah, I think that's too far. I
Too
think
far.
that's going too far. Yeah, I mean, just especially at the time that they fought, who Conor McGregor was and who Floyd Mayweather was at their points in their career. I mean, Floyd wasn't at his peak, but he was still undefeated Floyd, and Conor was basically at the peak of UFC. Um, that's a little bit different, I feel like. But I feel like it's still gonna sell. You know, I mean, Jake Paul, kudos to Jake Paul, man. The way that, you know, things started out, a lot of people, you know, said what they said. I said a lot of what I said about Jake Paul, and I mean, I didn't have a lot of belief in Jake Paul. And like I said, honestly, like this was the first fight that I felt like had some merit, even though Silva is like 45 years old. He's like 23 years older or whatever. This is the first fight that had some merit. Being able to unanimously beat Anderson Silva on points, man. A lot of people can't do that. Anderson Silva just won a real boxing match against a real boxer, so you can't say, oh, it's because he's an MMA guy, because Anderson Silva's proven he can box too. So, I mean, Jake Paul's definitely got some merit now, and Nate Diaz, we know who Nate Diaz is, so both of them can kind of sell alone. So putting them together, man, I feel like it's got to be a big deal.
That's the biggest payday out for both guys, I think. I mean, both of them. All right, this is what Nate Diaz wanted. This is exactly what Nate wanted when he was leaving the UFC, right? Like, hey, into the UFC. We talked about it, into the UFC on an absolute high note after they tried to screw him over. And now he gets to stick it to Dana one more time as he goes fights Jake, name Dana's nemesis and Jake Paul, and makes more money than he's probably ever will in the UFC. Both these guys have kind of get to stick it to Dana. And I got to ask you, Craig, like, I don't understand Dana's thought process here. Like, we get into, the last night's fight card in the nice Apex, again, great, with Arnold Allen and Calvin Kattar. And he's going up against on a Saturday night where Jake Paul is the main attraction. Like, if he hates Jake Paul so much, wouldn't you, if you're going to go head to head with him, wouldn't you want your fight card to be in front of thousands of people and have a little bit, that card was good last night, but I mean, we've seen better fight cards, and it's still just a drawback because it is in the Apex. Like, it makes you not really want to tune in because the fans aren't there, where, Jake Paul and Anderson Silva are fighting out in a sold out arena.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that just shows how much Dana doesn't really care about Jake Paul, or maybe there is a little bit of some sort of respect there. I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's just Dana just sticking to his game. Dana's just always been that way. Dana feels like, I don't need to change anything I'm doing because I'm making myself a ton of fucking money. I don't need to pay fighters more. I don't need to change shit. And Dana's always kind of been that way. But I do think it would have been cool to see, an arena there. I mean, part of the thought process there with the UFC, I mean, you could have caught them both. The UFC main event was over before Jake Paul and Silva entered the ring. You know what I mean? And that was the fight a lot of people cared about. I don't think a lot of people tuned into a ton of the prelims on the Jake Paul card. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think a whole lot of people were signing up for Lev Bell versus Uriah Hall. It is, but I mean, that's boxing though, right? Like, it's a bunch of people that, I don't want to say nobodies, but just people coming up, and then you have the main card. Like, that's just how boxing works, and they're in, in their pay-per-views, how they set up things. Katie Taylor was on that card. She's a great boxer as well, but I'm kind of with you. I would have liked to see him kind of go head to head and really just like Dana either stick it to it. You mentioned something, Craig. It kind of reminded me. What's the chances? Jake Paul has kind of come out and said he wants to start a fighters union. He wants Anderson to help him out. That was kind of like their quote unquote bet. What's the chances of Jake actually getting that done? He's trying to fight, better pay for all MMA fighters and, health insurance. What's the chances that Jake Paul's actually that guy that gets this done, with maybe possibly Anderson Silva at his side?
I gotta think that it's a fairly good chance, right? I mean, I feel like just the way that the world is moving, the way that pro sports are moving, there's got to be better benefits down the road for these guys, and things have got to get a little bit better for fighters. I mean, just because you look at the money, in boxing, you look at the money in MMA, and you look at the difference in things. I feel like eventually there is going to be a fighters union, and I mean, all these things start because, there's a will. And right now, Jake Paul's got a will towards that. And if he gets some big names and the more Jake Paul keeps doing what he's doing, the more financial back he's going to have behind him as well. So, I mean, I feel like at some point, the chances of it happening are pretty high.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that Jake can do is he has money, right? Like, I think that's what he doesn't have to do this stuff. He was already a millionaire before he even started boxing, like, and a known actor, all that type of stuff. So I think like he doesn't need this, so he can put that extra money that he's making to help push that, where normal fighters who are coming up, they come from nothing, and then they're using the UFC to get money and make money, to where it's harder for them to get their face out. Where Jake, he doesn't need that extra money. He can just come out and say, hey, like, I confront this. I have the money. I have the backing already, before he even ever started fighting. And now he's fighting, and he's winning. And it'll be interesting before we move on, like, who right now, if it's Nate Diaz, Jake Paul next, who you like in that one? And is Nate Diaz like the final MMA boss for Jake Paul before he gets like legitimate boxers? Like, is that it? It's like Nate Diaz, and now it's time to fight like real ranked maybe boxers.
I'm gonna say yes, just because I think there was a good chance that Jake Paul could have fought a real boxer this time around. His last fight, things fell through overweight. There was talks about him fighting Fury's brother, but he's got passport issues or something, and so I feel like at some point Jake Paul's gonna start fighting real boxers. I mean, and at the end of the day, I mean, us as fans, I earn respect for him beating Anderson Silva. Um, like I said, if I had to pick right now, I'd almost pick Jake Paul to beat Nate Diaz. I mean, I'm a Diaz Army guy. I'm gonna be rooting for Nate. I know Nick Diaz will be there. Those are two of my favorite fighters. But just the fact that Nate Diaz doesn't care if you hit him, Nate Diaz will lose a decision. He'll lose on the card to go out there and put on a show and just hurt you in the process of it. And I feel like that's kind of how that fight would go. I feel like Jake Paul might come out of that fight more hurt than he's been hurt in any other fight before, but he'd still probably win it on the card. But as far as the final MMA boss, I mean, I think that you see Jake Paul fighting boxers because the real boxing community is going to give him a hard time until he does. But at the same time, I mean, it's Jake Paul's out here making money. He's going to go where the money's at, I don't know what MMA name would be next after Nate Diaz. I think it's going to be an actual boxer, but you never know. It wouldn't surprise me to see another, MMA type. If it's a big money fight, it's a big money fight. Jake Paul be involved.
The only name I think in the MMA community that's bigger than Nate Diaz is Conor McGregor, right? Like it's weird because like they're gonna always be linked together, and it seems like we just alluded to like Conor's like heyday in UFC was like 5 years ago. At this point in time, like hasn't won a UFC fight, and I get he beat Cowboy early 2000s, so like it's been a long time for Conor. And who knows what's happening with him. He come out and said, because he's not in the USADA pool, that he couldn't even fight in the UFC until late 2023 is kind of his plan. So obviously we're not going to see him this year, maybe later next year. It's going to take 6 months plus for Conor to re-enter the USADA pool. So there's that. I just think that that's the only it's Nate Diaz and Conor if Jake wants to do that. But after he beats Nate Diaz, it might be time for a real boxer, or he's even talked about doing some MMA stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so if Jake Paul and Conor fight, that's the big ticket. That's the money ticket. But if Jake Paul goes out there and beats Conor McGregor in a boxing match, I feel like there's less merit to that as a fighter than there is to beating Silva and Diaz right now. Because, like you said, Conor's heyday's been a long time ago. We ain't seen him win a fight outside of Cowboy in 5 years, so I feel like if they can make that fight happen, obviously it happens because there's just too much dang money on the table. But
yeah, I mean,
I think the next time we see Conor, it's in UFC.
Yeah, I mean, he still has a contract with UFC. It's not expired. He just can't, you know what I mean? So there's that. Nate Diaz is a complete free agent. So let's get that on the books. That'll be like one of my fights I'm looking forward to the most next year. And it's in January. We'll do a post 2012 show or 2020 show, this past year's show, give out some awards, and then we'll do kind of some fights that we're looking forward to in 2023. So that might be on one of the fights that I'm looking forward to the most. Nate Diaz versus Jake Paul. Let's get into the UFC here, Craig. Arnold Allen wins. A second round fight. I don't even know. I don't know what you call that. This featherweight division continues to be really weird. I mean, it's like the second big fight in a row, right? Where it's like we saw it like the Yair and Ortega fight ends in a weird spot. Josh Emmett beats Cater in a close fight. It's kind of, most people thought Cater won. And then last night looks like Cater blows out his knee in the first round and then just couldn't do anything. Fight over in the second. Arnold Allen wins. What's next for Arnold Allen, and what do we do with this featherweight mess as Volk goes to fight at 155?
Yeah, man. So I mean, like Kenny nailed it in the group They should have never let him go back there in the second. I mean, that fight was over at the end of the first. I mean, everybody saw it. His knee gave out. The fact that he survived on the ground, till the bell, that should have been the end of it. They shouldn't have let him go back out there. But yeah, man, now the featherweight division, it's in a tough spot. Obviously, I think if Volk is going to go do Volk's thing, that there's got to be an interim belt. But there's 3 dudes and there's 2 dudes to put in that match. I mean, you got Emmett, you got Arnold, and you got Yair. Yair is supposed to get a title fight if he beat Ortega, and that was another injury stoppage. So him and Arnold Allen for the interim belt makes a lot of sense. But then what do you do with Josh Emmett? And so it's a 3-headed monster there, and somebody's going to get left out. So it's going to kind of be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know what to do with the featherweights. Like, I mean, Volk said it right? Like last week, we kind of talked about it. This division's holding me up. Like, I'm not holding the division up. That's holding me up because there is no clear-cut number one. Arnold alluded to it. He wanted to come out here and make his case for the number 1 ranked guy. And unfortunately, he kind of said this division sucks. Like, he's like, I'm about to go to 155 because this division sucks. He was kind of making a joke, because it seems like this featherweight division's just kind of cursed right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If Volk wasn't going, then who? There's no, like you said, there's no clear-cut number 1 contender. There's a lot to sort out here, and that's the thing. If there is an interim belt, the 2 guys that you put in that fight, if it is Yair and Allen, and Josh Emmett's the outsider, does he sit and just fight the winner of that while Volk keeps on going and doing his thing? Or how? I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of a mess there at the top.
It is a mess. I mean, Volk, figure Volk's going to fight in February against Islam. Depending on what happens, maybe he wants to be pretty active. So at the earliest, you would think maybe late May, early June. May, June timeframe for the next featherweight. So there needs to be another fight, a featherweight fight, whether it's for the interim or a clear-cut number 1 contender, needs to happen somewhere. Maybe even put it on that Perth card. It seems like I don't understand Yair Rodriguez. It seems like he's very bent on fighting Volk for the title, wants to sit out. But like, what the hell have you done and showed us that you're a guy that deserves it? You've been missing in and out of action. Then you lose to Max Holloway, which was an absolute war. And then you kind of a fluky type win. I mean, the damage was done, but I mean, part of that was Ortega's shoulder did pop out. So, and who knows when Ortega's ready? Maybe you match up Ortega, Arnold Allen, and you do Yair, Josh Emmett.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I feel like Yair, I guess his complaint is that before that Ortega fight, he was told if he won it that he was getting a title shot, and
Dana says a lot of things. Dana said Sugar Yan was going to be a number 1 fight, and then kind of backtracked that up after last week, and looks like we're on train for Henry Cejudo.
Right, Dana says that a lot leading up to a fight, and it doesn't follow through. But here's the thing: if Volk is going to go do his thing, and they're going to make an interim belt, if you want a title shot with Volk, you have to get that interim belt. So, I mean, he's going to have to fight somebody,
What? So, would you rather? Are you which matchup you like better? Would you rather see Yair, Arnold Allen, Yair, Josh Emmett for the interim, and then the odd man out maybe gets Ortega? And who knows what's going on with Max Holloway? I mean, I don't think Max is Max done here. I mean, he needs Volk to you give up the title, right, or lose or something for him to, because we've seen that match 3 times. They're not going to do a 4 anytime soon.
And yeah, no, especially just because the last fight wasn't as close as the previous fights, So I feel like that was kind of the end of that book. But I mean, if it's one or the other, man, I guess if you're Josh Emmett, you can say that, I beat Calvin Kattar in 3 rounds. I didn't beat him because he blew his knee out. So maybe he gets the shot over Arnold Allen. Maybe Arnold Allen is the odd man out here. I mean, because both of their last wins are over the same guy. And I mean,
And both with controversy. Both with controversy.
Right. Emmett and Cater was a close decision. I mean, some people thought that Calvin Cater won that fight, but I mean, I guess that's the only difference here, really, is that Arnold Allen won it off of an injury. And then if Yair just wants to sit out and not be active and just keep on doing his complaining, then just put Emmett and Allen against each other. I mean.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I mean, I just think Yair needs to fight more. He's been inactive. Like, it's been like a whole year. He just hasn't been active, and I don't think you should reward inactivity. Let's reward the guys who have been battling out. I mean, Arnold Allen said his hands are still a little hurting, but seemed like he was kind of throwing them a little bit all right. I would have liked to seen that fight just go a little bit longer. It's hard to judge. I hate that stuff when that happens, because it's like, man, like, we didn't get what we were promised. I know we kind of talked about it yesterday. It was like, hey, I'm kind of pumped for this fight. Like, this could be a number one type contender fight. Like, this is Arnold Allen's like prove it moment, right? Like, he hasn't really fought like the top guys. He was ready for a top 5 guy, and you give him the gatekeeper and, quote unquote gatekeeper in the tough guy in Calvin Cater, who's been in some battles, and then, that the knee goes.
Yeah, man, and it did look like Arnold Allen was starting to get it together, man. He was starting to, catch Calvin Cater with some shots, and yeah, I mean, I wish we would have been able to see it go further. I mean, like you said, man, we were kind of pumped up for this fight. This fight was going to prove a lot Arnold Allen's way. So the fact that it ended that way, it always sucks, because you feel like you don't come out of the fight knowing what you wanted to know. But I mean, you can't take it away from Arnold Allen. It wasn't anything he did. I mean, he was looking pretty good there at the end of the first round, and it's a terrible spot for Calvin Cater, but it sucks just as much for the guy that has to win the fight that way. You know what I mean?
We got a comment coming in here. Oh, this is a MMA show, J Tebow 64, but he wants to know DJ Moore, Cortland Sutton, so we can ask that as a couple football guys. Craig, I'll let you handle that one as we take a mid break of the UFC show here.
Tough choice, just because DJ Moore might have something going here with the new and PJ Walker, and I got to see it from Russ. I'll say DJ Moore this week. If I got to go one way or the other, they're playing Atlanta, so I'd go DJ Moore.
Yeah, I would stay away from the Denver team. Maybe he just needs some fantasy advice, because that game's getting ready to kick off here, so he's panicking. So he just tuned in, and hey, appreciate it, brother.
None of the fantasy shows are going this early. There ain't nobody to ask right now.
Right. Hey, so we got you covered. We got everything covered here on Headkicks and Haymakers, UFC, football. We got it all, baby. That's what we do. I just wanted to, that stat I wanted to share again. I shared with you in the group last night. In UFC history, there's been 13 main events that have ended due to unforeseen accidental injury. 4 of those have been in 2022. Craig, like, is it this year just like cursed? Because I mean, that's a lot of it seems like that's a lot of main event. It's been a stretch run here for the UFC. Bad luck.
It has been, man, and I feel like there was a point in time where we had mentioned it on this show, because it felt like we were getting a lot of main events ending that way, and that's only talking main events. That's not talking the TJ injury, in the co-main, and there's just been a lot of fights end that way, man. So, but 4 main events, that's big, man. I mean, that's your main event of your card ending on injury.
Yeah. Hey, and the worst thing about that is, like, hey, you know what? Danny could be like, this is why we stay in the Apex, because we would have disappointed thousands of fans, due to injury, because it happened in London. Like, it seems like Dana's kind of saying, like, we are going to get away from the Apex. He kind of come out and said that this week. Like, this would be like the last year of the Apex. Thank God. Get back to doing what you're doing. The fighters deserve big crowds, man. That's just That's just what I believe. I think fans enjoy it more. The
Yeah, and
fighters deserve more.
we've talked about it before, man. Like it's just good for the sport. Like get the sport into some of these, smaller, not huge cities, but some of these smaller areas, and I mean, get the place sold out, get everybody there feeling the energy of the arena, and get some good fights on some of these cards, man. All it can do is grow the sport and make everybody in the UFC more money. So I don't understand why they haven't been doing it.
Yeah, I also build the card around like wherever city you're going. Try to build around a card that of a guy that is close to that region. Like, you know what I mean? Whether it's the top ranked guy or lower ranked guy, but you know what I mean? Like, why is Wonder Boy and Kevin Holland fighting in Orlando? Like, they're not. Neither one of those guys are Miami guy or Florida guys. Like, that's just you see what like I want like kind of like the old wrestling territory days where it's like, hey, this was our top guy of this region. Like, put him back in his hometown. Build that card around a couple different guys.
Right, you almost get like hometown, like home crowd feel in some of the fights. You get a lot of energy on one side, you get the boos and stuff on the other side, and like I said, like in some of these smaller areas, you get kind of your hometown dudes that brings everybody out, and it gets people there. And then once they're there, I mean, you just sell your sport. You're selling all the other names. They're learning about it. They become more intrigued, and you gain more fans as a business. I mean, the old WCW, WWF, that's how they built a business. I mean, just traveling the country like that and marketing their dudes in certain areas.
100%. I'm with you on that. Craig, a guy who's been in the UFC news before we get out here, we got to touch on John Jones. He has been trying to get Stipe. He's trying to fight him in December 282. It's been reported that they wanted to do Francis and Jones. Francis cannot go. His contract's going to end. It seems like it's now for John Jones in December versus Stipe, or maybe Francis and John Jones in March. Is Stipe done here? Like he has just gone, hey, I'm full-time firefighter. I no longer want to do this stuff, and he's just never going to put out a statement, it seems like.
Yeah, that's the weird thing is like I haven't really been able to see where Stipe's talked about anything. The weird thing for me is it sounds like John Jones was wanting to fight Stipe by the end of this year, and in an interview before the last pay-per-view I was watching, they asked Dana if we would see John Jones by the end of this year, and he said that it would probably be next spring when we see John Jones. So I'm guessing Dana knows something, or Dana's just he's got what he wants to do. But I feel like if that's what he says, then I feel like that's what I believe. We're not going to see John Jones until next spring. So maybe they are trying to set it up with Francis, because maybe Stipe, like you said, maybe Stipe is just over it. Maybe he's full-time firefighter and that's what he's doing now. So I don't know. I haven't been able to see, like I said, I haven't been able to see much of what Stipe has had to say on the situation. I know John Jones seems like he's ready, says he's been training, says he plans to dominate his first heavyweight fight the way he dominated his first light heavyweight fight. So the fans are ready to see John Jones, I think. I mean, I'm ready to see John Jones, so hopefully we can make something happen here. I'd like to see Jones and Stipe. I mean, I was just talking to a buddy of mine yesterday he coaches wrestling, buddy of ours, buddy of the program, James. And I was telling him, man, Francis Ngannou is just not the dude you want to kick off your heavyweight career against. I mean, that is just so I think part of me thinks John Jones wants the Stipe fight because he knows he can win that fight. He can come out and win his first heavyweight fight. Francis Ngannou is a scary dude, man.
Not only is Francis not the guy that you want to fight in your heavyweight, John Jones, by the time he fights the next spring, it'll be 3 years since John Jones had any ring time, like any octagon time. Like he hasn't fought anybody in over 3 years. That's a long layoff, folks. Like there's gonna be a lot of questions going into that fight. I do like the Stipe fight. You said Stipe hasn't said anything. He hasn't said anything, Craig. I follow him on Instagram and Twitter, and maybe he just posting firefighter stuff and pictures of his family. Like he's not saying anything. I think he's done. I think he's officially done as a fighter. I think Francis knocked him out into firefighting, and he just said, I'd rather go get burned by fires than ever feel a punch like that ever again. And kudos to him because I'm not doing either one. Like I'm not going through a fire and I'm not getting in no octagon anytime soon. So kudos to, I mean, he's just doing things, wants to be, I think, just a regular old dude. I don't think, somebody kind of said this before. It's like Stipe just, that fighting wasn't his first love like firefighting was. And he just kind of fell into this like UFC thing, made some money, is now a firefighter and gets to go home and be with his family. Like, hey, kudos to you, Stipe. If that is, like, you were probably arguably the greatest heavyweight of all time, had a good run, defended the belt more than everybody. So if this is it, kudos. I would have liked to seen him and John Jones fight. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get that. I do think it's probably going to be Francis versus John Jones. Craig, I was on a show. I was listening to a show, and they were saying, well, but you could put John Jones with anybody. John Jones isn't just going to fight anybody, right? Like, it's going to be for the title or Stipe.
Yeah, I mean, John Jones is kind of in Conor McGregor territory. He's only coming back to fight a very meaningful fight. I mean, John Jones, you're not going to go put John Jones out there against Derek Lewis or, anybody that's not either the number one contender or the guy holding the belt. And, I mean, shoot, man, like you were saying about Stipe, maybe we won't see him again. Maybe that's Stipe's story. Why come back? Why come back and fight John Jones? I'm not going to retire with the belt if that's my last fight. I mean, what does Stipe got to prove? Like you said, right now he's arguably the best, if not definitely one of the best heavyweights of all time. He's already been a champion, and like you said, if it wasn't his first love, maybe he's wrote his book in the MMA game, and maybe he's on to be a father. Man, I don't know exactly how much money he made in his last fight, but there is definitely a number, and it's a very big number, on how much it would cost to let Francis Ngannou punch me in the face. So maybe it just didn't meet it, maybe he realized, man, like DC and these boys have been hitting me, but Francis is different, man. That money wasn't worth it,
And he beat Francis the first time, but then he realized, hey, this new improved Francis is something to even be more fierce with. And I think he kind of realized that. So maybe that's it. Maybe it's all over for Stipe. Craig, we'll go ahead. We'll get out of here. You got any last, any last thoughts here before we get out of here?
No, man, just looking forward. Just a couple weeks away to 281, man. We got pay-per-view bangers down the stretch here this year, and the last one was good, and I'm excited for the next one, man.
That's right. Yeah, 282 in just 2 weeks, man. I'm excited. Izzy versus Michael, whatever what's it, Pierre?
Alex Pereira.
Alex Pereira. I about said Michelle Pereira. Alex Pereira, Dustin Poirier versus Mike Chandler on the card. So that card's going to be a banger at MSG. So we're looking forward to that. We'll be back next Sunday with another great episode of Head Kicks and Haymakers. We'll be back tonight at 8:30 Central Time Zone for our NFL Week 8 reaction show. So please tune in, be a friend, tell a friend, share, like, you know what the deal is. Subscribe. Make sure you guys are checking out Let's Talk Sports as well. We're live. I'll be back on there in about 2 hours with all the guys getting ready for Sunday's games. The Broncos and Jags are getting ready to kick off. So for Craig, this is Bodkins. This has been another great episode of Head Kicks and Haymakers. We appreciate y'all tuning in. Catch us tonight back on the Bodkins Show for our NFL Week 8 reaction show. I'm going to hit that outro, baby. We're going to get out of here. Have a good rest of the day, folks.